Good morning, everybody. I'm in Milwaukee at an undisclosed location. Sean Spicer, Tim Hogan, along with me. Thank you for coming back to the morning meeting. Whether you're watching on Zoom or on YouTube, we're glad to have you here. Day two of the convention. President Trump has no public event schedule. It's scheduled in his hotel room. The campaign and the RNC have not said this, but I'd anticipate that he'll show up in the hall tonight somehow, somewhere. And the convention itself is going to focus on the themes of security. So a lot on immigration, a lot on crime. Nikki Haley is expected to speak, maybe the last speaker. I would expect Trump to either be in the hall in person as he was last night, or appearing virtually just because that's what they do. He wants it to be the Trump show. President Biden, we've seen some presidential candidates in the past campaign during the other side's convention. In the olden days, the presidential candidate who wasn't having a convention would go dark, would go on vacation or something. But Biden's not the first to deviate from that. But he's out west attending a couple of conventions, NAACP, Hispanic Organization Convention, doing another interview. We're going to talk about this question of whether, despite the fact that there was a period not that long ago when Democrats said Joe Biden needs to be out there doing a lot of interviews, whether he should continue doing them. The vice president doesn't have any public events. Here in Milwaukee, this is where we're going to start, guys. Outside the convention, it's the worst organized convention I've ever been to. Just logistically, for delegates, for reporters, for others, it's just a mess. There's just, the security perimeter is massive. The exits and entrances aren't clearly marked. It's creating a lot of unhappiness. Inside the hall, though, night one was, to my mind, very technically proficient in terms of the music, in terms of the pacing, in terms of the speeches and their length, in terms of the video screens, in terms of obviously the orchestration of President Trump's appearance. Very strong. And that matters because reporters are theater critics at events like this. And although they come in here with some momentum, Sean, you first, tell me, do you agree that just technically, and in terms of message delivery, a very effective night?
I'll go back to my Dancing with the Stars days. I'm going to give it a 9.5 mark. It was excellent. I thought the speakers were phenomenal. The stagecraft was phenomenal. To your point, the music, the light. I mean, it's a show at the end of the day. We all recognize that. And it was pitch perfect. I was actually really concerned post-COVID how conventions would go on and up the game. They hit it out of the park this time.
And Sean, good point. Not only they hit it out of the park, but it was extremely traditional. Except for the band on the stage full time, which I don't remember anybody doing. Maybe they have.
Real quick though, I think that your one last point that I think needs to get underscored. Trump being in the there took the media, and instead of maybe overlooking a lot of what was happening, it made them focus. He got that. He understands him being in the hall is a media draw. Had he not been there, had JD not been there, this would have maybe not gotten the attention that it did. He gets so much credit for thinking about things like that.
I totally agree.
Oh,
Tim,
nice. Okay.
Hats
Do you
off.
want to replace mine?
Hats off, or do you have some sniping? But somebody needs to meet there. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, no, I think it was well done. I do think Trump being in the hall was a good move. I mean, seeing him listen to the music, looking like he's getting a little bit emotional there, meeting with his family. I think it was produced very tight. There were a couple, slip ups. I think there was a point where Speaker Mike Johnson was talking, introducing somebody. Something happened. He had to shuffle off the stage. Ron Johnson had the wrong speech loaded in the teleprompter and called Democrats a clear and present danger. Not great when you're trying to de-escalate. And then he said, no, that was the wrong speech. I didn't mean to say that. But for the most part, production-wise, I think very well done.
Yeah, I've never seen that look on Trump's face, emotional in a way I've never seen him. Everyone I know who's talked to him and some of the public interviews, he's just in a different space now in terms of how he's thinking about everything, or at least lots of things. Let's talk about Vance real quick. Tim, you first. It's turning out to be a better pick than I thought it would be just in terms of launch. The Wall Street Journal editorial page doesn't like it, but people generally here have been enthusiastic, and most people I've talked to buy what the Trump campaign is selling. And I don't know that the Democrats' attacks are going to last more than a day, because that's a tradition. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I think there are a few things about Vance. One that hasn't been talked about so much, but I think Democrats will lean into at some point, is that he is probably the least qualified vice presidential pick since Sarah Palin. He is the youngest since 1952, Richard Nixon and Eisenhower. He's the first.
Do you not like young people, Tim?
I look, as a millennial, I love that we have a millennial on the ticket. Maybe not just this millennial. I feel like that's the Hillary Clinton critique couched in generations, for not just this woman. But I think there is an issue too that this doesn't really bring any balance to the ticket. That was not what this pick was supposed to do. But it's also like a testosterone ticket now, particularly at a time when Democrats are talking about the gender gap, and you've got J.D. Vance on the record saying a whole bunch of problematic things, comparing abortion to slavery. And in addition, I think the other issue that Democrats will go after, and you're seeing it in their first paid today, which they're billboards, so it's not going to dictate the paid strategy, is tying J.D. Vance as the operator of Project 2025. I think Democrats need to learn a little bit better how to talk about that. And I think putting someone like JD on the ticket who talks about the de-Ba'athification of the party, who's extreme on a bunch of these issues, is a good opening for Democrats too.
Sean, Vance, pro, con, up, down?
I'm pro JD, and I think that every text I got last night, even from the naysayers, wasn't a huge fan. I'm on board now. So I think this echoes what you're saying. The people who weren't 100% are now there. I haven't found any major dissenter in any of the comments, texts that I have gotten so far.
Well, the Wall Street Journal editorial page and a lot of donors are dissenting, but I don't think it matters.
They're all going to get on board. And look, Elon
Yeah.
ponied up 45. Money's not going to be a problem.
Sean, this Nikki Haley thing came about in kind of a murky way, right? Like all of a sudden she was invited. She was set in motion before the shooting, so it wasn't a reaction to that. Would you expect her to get a huge reception in the hall? And would you expect her to minimize saying things that might cause offense to Team Trump?
Yeah, well, she may have gotten invited pre-shooting. She's speaking post-shooting. And so I think her comments, look, she should go back and watch the Ted Cruz speech from 2016.
And not do that.
and go, not that. She may not be effusive in her praise, but she's going to endorse him. She's already said she's voting for him. She is a very politically astute individual. So I think you're going to see her. She may not do a full-throated endorsement, but she will be on message tonight.
Do you know, is she the last speaker, as some people have suggested to me she might be?
I don't know.
I mean, if she's the last speaker and she stays only on the things that unite them, that seems like it would be pretty powerful symbolism. Tim, what do you think?
The one thing I would say is, look, I thought that the Teamster president last night was a friggin' brilliant call. This was never going to happen if Trump wasn't the nominee at any other Republican convention. And yet he said the right thing. It wasn't an endorsement. He talked about him being a tough SOB. Listen, I'll take Nikki Haley saying he's what we need right now and given the choices. She doesn't have to go over the top. She needs to send the bat signal up and say, I'm voting for him. You should too.
Yeah, right. I don't think that she will. Yeah, I don't think that she will. I don't think that she credibly can, given the campaign that she ran. And I think it's an open question as to whether or not. I think it's smart if she gets a later spot for sure. But I think it's an open question whether or not she can really shift some of those zombie Haley voters from the primary in any meaningful way.
We don't really know much about the program tonight. I've been told we're going to hear some of the Senate candidates speak. There's no daytime program. The RNC does a briefing that's for planning purposes only at 11 Eastern time. So the press will secretly know more about what's going to happen. But I don't really know what tonight's going to look like, which makes me think there's some Trump orchestrated, besides his potential appearance. I suspect we'll see some surprises tonight, some things that will, besides real people.
Mark, one real quick point. I think that there's, just to be clear, having been through this before with him, I think there's an element of they don't know what they're doing. There's a little bit of this is happening in real time. So
for sure. Absolutely. Conventions are just the nature of the beast. Like even the best organized campaigns, that just scrambles at conventions. All right, let's talk about Biden briefly. Lester Holt interview seemed to do nothing but hurt him. 80% of the coverage is about fighting with Lester. 20% is about apologizing, showing weakness and apologizing for saying bullseye. So my question to you guys is, should he keep doing interviews? He's got one today, or interviews not his fort, as we like to say. Tim.
Well, you have to keep doing interviews, right? There's not a viable press strategy where you're not doing interviews. And I think the Lester Holt interview, like I said yesterday, it is what it was at this point. It is very difficult to get a good headline out of an interview like that. You're walking into a situation where you are expected to call for calm and unity. You're not expected to draw an extremely hard contrast. I think he did a decent job threading the needle. But like I said yesterday, at the end of the interview, he said, you know, I'd love to come back and actually talk about some issues. And I think that was the struggle in that interview, is breaking through in that environment with issues that he wants to talk about.
I
He's
think
talking about it.
on any other night, that would have been a horrible, horrible interview. I think the one piece of advice is that Biden and his team should watch the morning meeting, because that's the one thing that Tim and I agreed on yesterday, where we said he should try to get out of this thing as a push. And he walks out today and it was a negative. And any other morning, there would be more calls for him to drop out of the race. But because of the convention last night, JD, Trump showing up, it's overshadowed. That was not a good move. It was not a good interview. And he got lucky that it's not more of a headline today.
There's some DNC people, some outside groups, some members of Congress trying to slow down the train to get Biden the nomination virtually within a couple weeks. Tim, again, you first. Is the dump Biden movement deader now than it ever has been since it started? Or do you think they could use this as a way to gin up a confrontation with Biden that could somehow make him reconsider?
Yeah, again, I think the further we are getting away from the debate, the closer we are getting to the convention, the closer we're getting to nominating. This is all more navel gazing. Like, are there folks who are still pushing? Yes. The probability that something happens gets lower and lower with every day. I don't think anyone's going to oust him from the ticket because of a Lester Holt interview. Again, he has to make the decision. There's no super convincing polling that that there is a better alternative at this point. So I don't think anything is going to change.
Sean? Concur. Okay. Your questions now. Let's go. James, you first. Unmute. Again, if you want to get in, please raise your hand, and we'd love to get to as many as we can here. So James, please unmute and go ahead.
Oh, there we go. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, in picking J.D. Vance, I think this is a bit of a missed opportunity by Trump. He's not well known. He's very young. So in those respects, as been pointed out, he's not unlike Sarah Palin and Dan Quayle, two other questionable VP picks from the past. He's also a senator, and I would prefer, as I believe America does, a governor, which is a chief executive position. But about the age thing, I can see the calculation. If Biden is too old to be president, then surely J.D. Vance is not too young.
Yeah. Yep. James, are you a Trump guy, a Biden guy?
I'm a Trump guy. 2016, reluctant in 2020, turned off by his some of his intemperate remarks and thin-skinned ways. But now I can't wait to vote for him in this election, given what Democrats have tried to do to him with respect to the prosecutions. And
are you turned off by Vance, or you just think other people will be?
I am a little bit, and I think other people may as well. He said some dumb things as well. Now, I'm sure when I was 31 years old, I said a lot of dumb things that I wouldn't say at 51 or 61. But I think these are going to be used against him now. But I think in the end, Trump saw in Vance himself a little bit, in that he's very tough and resilient, having overcome evidently a pretty rough childhood. And his mother's substance abuse issues may have resonated with Trump, in that his brother was also an alcoholic.
Yeah. James, super interesting. You want to ask a question, or you want us to move on?
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, James, thank you. Tim, Sean, you guys want to comment on that?
I think one thing to underscore there is, yeah, he has a short history, but a history of being an inflammatory pontificator, which means there's a lot of material, particularly from that Senate race.
But does anybody care about material about a vice president candidate after the first 48 hours? I've never seen that sustained.
Right. I mean, I think for the purposes, again, of putting a face on Project 2025 and on the abortion issue, I think it supercharges it. I think,
listen, Project 2025 is an inside baseball game. Yes, the people on this call know it. Yes, political insiders know it. But walk down the street in any town in America and say Project 2025, and they're going to look at you nuts.
Correct.
The thing is, I would just say this. If I were J.D. Vance, and anytime you brought up the criticism, first of all, he's answered it pitch perfect before. The second is, I would say, well, Kamala Harris accused Joe Biden of being a racist, and they got over it. I think that this happens. And I think, to Mark's point, for 48 hours, it'll be fodder, and then we'll move on, and no one cares anyway.
I got to stop you guys to talk about Project 2025, because I agree with what Sean said, and Tim, you seem to agree. I can't imagine this catching on. I cannot imagine. Maybe I'm wrong, but they're spending an enormous amount of time on it.
Because they got nothing else. That's the problem. And I don't mean like this is it.
But
No.
just why not talk about Social Security, Medicare, and tax cuts for the wealthy over this?
Right. I think Project 2025 theoretically would be something that is an umbrella that organizes a bunch of extreme policies, but you talk about it and people, their eyes glaze over. Talking about it as like a takeover of the government with conservative policies like no-fault divorce, extreme abortion. I mean, that's how we should be talking about it. It's just not working as a catch-all phrase.
I don't get it.
Might as well say Area 51. I mean, this is like no one knows what the hell you're talking about.
Megan McCain, veteran convention watcher, please join us.
Hi, I'm sorry I'm not on a video. I'm getting my kids ready. I just wanted to say one quick thing about JD. So about a year ago or 6 months ago when he was running or before that, he said some incredibly incendiary things about single women in the Republican Party and that they are like childless cat women. And like, I have a bunch of friends in my life who are single women who were very offended about that, who are also Republicans. And I think that in particular, given that the Republican Party already has this like issue with younger women, I actually think that is going to be the biggest thing to overcome, or a big thing. And I think those comments are going to haunt him, because I have been to multiple places where single women came up to me who were conservative, who said, if the party platform is you have to have 9 kids and be married, otherwise you can't be conservative, what is the future here? And I think that is going to be a problem, not to rain on your parade, Sean, about JD, but like there are real issues, and that's not something that I don't know really how you just make that go away. That's not an attack on Donald Trump. That's an attack against single women in America. Yeah,
Megan, I totally agree with you, and I've heard that from others. And I'm not minimizing what you're saying. Do you find him appealing otherwise in any way? I know you're not a huge Trump fan, but does the fact that he's younger or whatever, is there anything you find appealing about him? Megan, oh, you muted. Let me try to. Megan, can you unmute and answer that if you're still there?
Sorry. So I really liked his book when it first came out, and I appreciate his story. Obviously I'm like a swamp creature, so he's not going to be my first choice. I was hoping for like Nikki Haley or a Youngkin or even a Marco Rubio. I have very serious questions about his stance on Ukraine and his foreign policy in general. It sounds cute to go to the Munich conference and say like, Ukraine is sucking money from America and America first and whatever. It also delves into, World War II territory where you sound like Lindbergh. So I have lots of questions. He's not the right candidate for me. Anecdotally, I have friends who have met him at political functions and said he is not charming at all. And I don't remember who told me this, but they went to a fundraiser with him where he was standing in the room and he had people come to him. He wasn't approaching other people. So I'll be curious to see how this all plays out.
Thank you, Megan. Good luck with the girls. All right, Gabriel, unmute, please.
Outside the swamp, with great respect to Megan, she couldn't be more wrong. In places like rural Michigan, where I've spent some time, the manliness ticket is going to succeed, not only with men who are sick and tired of being trashed, but with women, with rural women, with working class women, with mainstream American voters, men and women alike. This is the return of manliness, which started the day that Trump stood up and shook his fist and said, fight, fight, fight. This could not be a better ticket. I hear all your reservations, folks, and I get it, because you guys are a sort of expert on what you're experts on. With all due respect, I knew it was going to be this ticket. You didn't call on me yesterday. I was going to bet you. Yeah. And it has to be, because it's so perfect.
Gabriel, are you going to vote for Trump for the third time general election this fall?
I wish I could say that. I'm going to vote for him for the second time.
Yeah. Which time did you miss?
It's a nice compliment. I missed the vote the first time, but so did Sohrab Ahmari, so did Patrick Deneen. A lot of us missed the first time.
So you've gone from voting for Hillary Clinton.
So did Ben Shapiro.
You've gone from voting for Hillary Clinton to celebrating the manliness ticket. That's your evolution.
I didn't vote. No, I didn't vote for Hillary. I just, at that time, we didn't know. We thought Trump wasn't competent. He proved us wrong.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Tim, Sean, what do you think of what Gabriel said?
I think that what Gabriel's saying to me harkens back to the bigger, broader point that I've made before, and I think everybody's made that's really paying attention. We're talking about a handful of people in a handful of states. And so if that moves some people in Michigan, God bless it. But that's what this matters, right? To Megan's I respect her view on this, but again, where are you? You know, I have a lot of family members in New England and they'll bitch about things and I'll say, great, I don't really care how you vote because you live in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. I care about if you live in Pennsylvania as Gabriel, or Michigan as Gabriel does. Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, we know the battleground states. Those states, a handful of people is going to what matters. And so do they move them at all?
Yeah.
Yeah, and go ahead, Tim. Sorry.
I was just going to say very quickly, I think I take Gabriel's comment, but I also take it with Megan's. And I think my point stands. I think the gender gap's going to get bigger.
Yeah. Look, it's a little bit like Clinton Gore, where it reinforces as opposed to balances, although there's obviously some offset with the age thing. I really do think the thing that Trump people seem to feel most fervently about is that this is a guy who speaks the language in an emotional, connective way to the kind of rural and ex-urban voters who powered Trump's victory in 2016, who didn't turn out quite the same way in 2020. And if you look at the data, a lot of the soft voters, of the voters who may not turn out, are that exact set of that group, and that group is massive in Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin. And he will focus on those three states. He'll go other places, but he will really focus on those three states. And they're counting on him to turn out. And their data people, their research suggests that he can do that. We'll see if he can, but that's a big part of why he's there, along with a lot of other reasons. So there are a lot of reasons to pick him. Now, there's some reporting that they were going to pick Rubio, except for the residency stuff. I'm not sure that that's true. All right, Jordan, unmute, please.
Hi. So I would consider myself a normie Republican. And I'm kind of referencing into President Biden's interview last night. About to start school at a top business school. I've worked for 2 governors, worked for a reputable think tank. My boyfriend's a Nikki Haley Republican. I couldn't help but watch the interview last night, followed up by tweets from Maxine Waters and AOC, and then comments from Sunny Hostin on The View. And I can't help but feel that the Democrats are wanting to egg on a second attempt. I know that's not all, but it really, with this inflammatory language, it really is beginning to feel that way.
What's an example of what you're talking about?
AOC went on the attack again last night, referring to Republicans as fascists. Maxine Waters is on with the existential threat to democracy again, saying Trump needs to be put in jail forever.
But you think saying those things is unseemly?
I think 48 hours after, I think 48 hours after an assassination attempt, that there's no national mourning, there's no taking the temperature down, there's no heeding President Biden's advice from the Oval Office. It feels as though there's this egging on again. And
did anything President Biden say in the Lester Holt interview fall in that category for you?
I think last night it did, yes. I think the responsible thing to do, I think Dana Perino made a really good point, which was many people talk in metaphors. All of us do in politics. The responsible thing for President Biden to have done would have been to say, I talked in a metaphor. Yes, metaphors can be taken to an extreme. I regret saying that. Time to turn up the temperature. Last night, he both sidesed it, and he kept egging it on. And my question in this kind of is for Tim is, say former President Trump comes out with a really great speech at the convention that unifies people and is very aspirational. And Maxine Waters, AOC, Sunny Hostin, and the rest of the media apparatus revert back to this language about existential threats to democracy, and any Republican that votes for Donald Trump is somehow a fascist. Or as Joy Behar said, anyone that wears a MAGA cap might as well be wearing a swastika. What does that do for the Democratic Party going forward? Because I think if there is a second attempt, if we keep this heated rhetoric up, I think it could destroy the Democrats for generations.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's like a lot to unpack there. I think one, in that interview, I mean, I read that interview as President Biden doing what he needed to do to continue the message that he delivered from the Oval Office, which was to say, you know, turn down the temperature. I also think he made a pretty explicit apology for the bullseye comment, to which your point, I think he is a metaphorical comment, right? And there's no extreme call to action based on that. I mean, like, look, should people be saying anyone who votes for Donald Trump, you know, should be wearing a swastika? No, I mean, like, you shouldn't be talking about people or voters that way. But there is also, I think there is a question and a belief that, look, January 6th is something that happened. There are attacks on democracy that happened, and there is not a compelling reason to just cede ground and to say that is not at stake. That is not an issue. That's something that happened in the past. I think that's the messaging needle that has to be threaded. That is very difficult, to your point, particularly in this moment, particularly in the last 72 hours.
Yep. Thank you, Tim. So lots of hands up. Some of you have already said you'd like this program to be an hour. It maybe someday it will be. For now, it's 30. Apologize to not getting to. We'll get to more of you tomorrow. Again, President Biden in Vegas. We'll see if what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas as he talks about housing policy. Very difficult for any politician, including a presidential candidate, to get coverage in Pacific time. It's just the biorhythms of the media make that tough. And of course, he's competing against the second night of the convention here in Milwaukee. We may be back later. I may be back later, I should say, with another two-way today. But Tim and Sean and I will be back tomorrow morning, 8:30 Eastern time, same bat channel, for another edition of this program, The Morning Meeting. We thank you for joining us. Apologize again for all the hands up. Hope you come back and raise your hand again tomorrow. Have a good day.